most important part of this whole thing, because it's about us coming together and celebrating the good stuff and reconnecting as neighbours and residents and citizens of Brisbane and all that. So it's really cool that you're all here, not just for the rally and the angry shouting, but for the positive vibes as well. So thanks for coming down. Before I give you the long rant about politics and everything though, I think it's really important that we acknowledge and pay respects to the traditional owners of this place. So I'd like to welcome Uncle Sam Watson up to the microphone, and he can give us the welcome to country. Thanks, Uncle Sam.
Thanks, Johnny, and thanks to the organisers for recognising that very special connection our mob have with country and always invite us along to these functions. So we're gathered on the sacred lands of the Jagera language group, and there are 4 principal nations that make up the language group. On this side of the river is known, our language is Maiwa. This side of the river there is the Jagera, Yagara and Yagarapul people. And through my maternal grandparents, who are now deceased, have very deep connections to the Jagera, Yagara and Yagarapul people. Our country extends from the river down to Moreton Bay, Quandamooka, down the Logan River, across the Ipswich Plains and out to the Toowoomba Ranges and back down to Brookfield. Jagera, Yagara and Yagarapul people. I acknowledge our sister tribe from the other side of the river, the Turrbal mob. Their country extends from QUT at Gardens Point there, which is a very special women's dreaming site, down to where the Royal Brisbane Hospital is, out to the Boondall wetlands and across the top end of Redcliffe. But across our community, we have mob from right across Queensland. People have come into Brisbane over the last 3 or 4 decades for a large number of reasons. We have an Indigenous community of more than 45,000 people. So, large mob. So on behalf of our elders and senior people, we'd welcome you to this place. And thanks for being here, because we have very serious concerns about what is happening to this place. I mean, here in West End, South Brisbane area. I grew up here back in the 50s and 60s. I used to sell the Telegraph down the road there. And we did have a very large community of our people across West End, South Brisbane, Highgate Hill. We had people who could afford to live here. But right through the 70s and 80s, as they wiped out all our different places and changed forever the south bank of the river. There used to be a number of places there that were very important to us. They've disappeared, and they put in the entertainment precinct, the arts precinct, and we lost a lot of the spaces. And our people were progressively moved out. So right here now in 2016, I do not know a single Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander person who actually owns their own house or apartment or unit or flat here in this general area, and that's appalling. And our mob who have stayed here for many decades, lived here, have been moved out to other places. They'll move out to places like Ipswich, Gales, Inala, Woodridge, Logan, and all due respect to those places, our mob did have that connection and bond to this place, to this community, but they've been priced out of the market, and it's just not acceptable. As time wore on, we started to see this community change dramatically, and we started to see the lifestyle. We started to see the trappings of our society move into a totally different direction. We started to see, Saturday mornings and Sunday mornings used to be the big social events over here. The cappuccino set moved in. So once the old FJ Holdens and others had moved on, then you had the bloody Volvos and BMWs and all this sort of bullshit coming in. So all due respect to that mob, they can afford a different set of wheels, but different mob, different values. I mean, I grew up in the days when our old mate, George, with his FJ Holden, he used to just live in Princhester Street here. He was an important person, and when you saw him cruise around his old brown FJ, and you saw our comrade from the Socialist Alliance, Jimmy McElroy, selling his papers there on the corner of Culture Street and Boundary Street, and you saw our mob, Aboriginal people wandering through to get down to Hope Street for breakfast, and had a good feel about it. This was life as we knew it, life as we wanted it. But like I said, there's been an enormous transition driven by the almighty dollar, by people who don't live here, who have no cultural or historical connection to the place. It's just dollars and cents, and you can't build a community around dollars and cents. You can take 100 grand, put in the corner, and burn it, and what does it leave? Nothing. We want a community, we want a society structured around real principles, real values, a place where we can raise our children, a place where, I mean, back in the days, back in the 80s and 90s, we used to start talking about, we had a lot of single blokes around the place who were finding it hard to cope with the changes, so we used to get men's groups going, these sorts of things, so that we're concerned about people we shared these streets and these footpaths with. We're concerned about how they felt about life, about how they dealt with their problems. This day and age, it's just come into a joint, come into a shop or coffee shop and bang, get your dollars off you, give you a cappuccino and bang, straight out the door. So we do have, like I said, major issues with these sorts of developments, the reasons behind these sorts of developments, what impact it's having on the physical characteristics of our community, the sort of place our young people are growing up within. It's just wrong. We need to stop that. We need to stop that very quickly. So it's good to be here. Thank you, Mob, for coming out and on a particularly beautiful Sunday morning. And we totally support everything that's going well. And Jonathan, mate, we'll have to get your media manager because, again, you made the Sunday Mail this morning. So you're going to have a terrible impact on ordinary people who are going to want to walk down Boundary Street at the same time that we're going to have this demonstration. You're a naughty man. So thanks very much.
Thanks, Uncle Sam. You always say if you're making the Courier Mail, you're making the right people nervous. And I think that's what we're doing here today. We're standing up to the corporate capitalism. We're standing up to forces that want to shape our city and shape our neighbourhood without listening to the people here on the ground and without caring about the future of our community. And that's fundamentally what this movement is about. It's not so much about how tall the buildings are or about how many supermarkets and shops there are. It's about community and it's about culture. And that's what motivates me to organise these events and to take an interest in this issue, because right now I'm feeling that slipping away in the inner city. That diverse, vibrant, connected community is fracturing and fragmenting. I'm seeing musicians and artists being priced out of the area. As Uncle Sam said, Aboriginal families are no longer able to afford to live in the area. What was once a vibrant hub and meeting place for new migrants is no longer such. There was a time when every time a new wave of migrants came to Australia, they settled here in West End and in the inner south side, and they can't afford to do that anymore. And that's particularly a problem when we think about this concept called locational disadvantage, which is where, because the housing's cheaper on the outskirts of the city, that's where the people on the lowest incomes settle and build their communities. But they miss out on the jobs and the good public transport and the community services and the cultural institutions that are nestled around the inner city and create that opportunity for social mobility. So when we're talking about creating an egalitarian society, a fundamental demand that underpins that must be the right for poor people to live in the inner city. That's ultimately what this is really about. It's about whether we want a suburb that's only for really, really rich people and for investors to make a profit from, or whether it's a community where people can meet and share ideas and connect with one another. And so I'm really grateful that you've all come out here today. I might just do a really, really quick poem, and then we'll invite someone up from Weka to share their thoughts and perspectives. But yeah, just to emphasise that this isn't just about West Village. This is about a much bigger issue that's fragmenting and tearing apart communities right throughout the inner city. And I'm so glad that you're all here today. Subtropical metropolis. Skyscraper shadows, no stopping this. Paved paradise, now we're knee-deep in bitumen, hemmed in by highways, rent hikes and greedy men, storm cloud stagnation. Taste the humidity. Sweat glues us to the couch, or is it apathy? The streets mutating, the past erased, evaporating community, we all displaced. Maybe one day we'll live and work in little concrete boxes and never see the sun. Talk to our computers, but not to other humans. Paint bomb futility in 4101. The city is a playground. The city is a cage. They say we're getting richer, but you can't pay a mortgage on minimum wage. Change the frame, but it's still the same picture. How many people sleeping outside? How many new apartments still unoccupied? Subdivide and conquer. Sunlight, a commodity. Maybe soon even public parks will charge an entry fee. So we sign our names, walk between the lines, pay their fines, play their games, smother the small joys. The busker can't compete with traffic and construction noise, KPIs and selection criteria, air conditioners and fluoro lights, Corro Drive car fumes, river bacteria, blood on the concrete from Wickham Street fights. The city is a paradise. The city is a sleeping pill. Melting bitumen keeps us on our toes. We count the cranes from the top of Highgate Hill. Profiteers count their dough. They call it progress. We call it madness. Take your paycheck, don't question this. Everyone becomes a predator in this metropolis. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Adrian Buzovic from West End Community Association to the microphone.
Good morning. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the land on which we meet and its people, the Jagera, and pay respect to their elders, past, present and to come, and particularly to Uncle Sam. There's been talk going around in recent times about who's got the right to determine what goes on here in this community. I'd like to point out that although I've lived here for only 25 years, my grandparents settled here after World War I in 1920. But really, if we're honest with ourselves, no one really has the right to say what happens here other than the Aboriginal people. In fact, none of us even has the right to live here until we've sought and been granted permission from the people of this land. Many of us have done just that, and in fact, the last ceremony was organised by the West End Community Association and held here on this very spot. So if you haven't been given permission to live here, I'd strongly encourage you to do so. I'm Adrian Buzovic and I'm representing WECA here today in a way that WECA represents the community of residents. Not perfectly, but to the best of my ability. I'm Vice President at the moment, and I wouldn't be President for all the tea in China or all the coffee in Brazil. When you're active in WECA, you can look forward to the expectations of many and abuse from the few. You can never do enough, and you'll have to do it without the luxury of wages or even headquarters. This community's been dealing with change since we newcomers planted corn here on Aboriginal land and then shot the Aborigines that picked it. We're currently in the throes of massive change that every one of us hopes will be in the interests of the environment and those who live and work here. That's real development. I need not reiterate how pivotal the ABSO site is in that change. I can clearly restate here and now that WECA is all for development. It always has been, and you can find out ample evidence of that. We would, however, like to point out that not all change is development. So what is positive change? It is, of course, change that serves to enrich the lives of actual people rather than enriching property prices, land values and bank balances. And what does enrich people's lives tends to be talked about, needs to be talked about and focused on. It always needs to be talked about and focused on. For me, it's where everyone's physical needs are taken care of, but more importantly, it's where community members know each other, help each other, and they dance and sing because they can't help themselves. With this in mind, I'd like to draw your attention to the way in which we pursue our ideals. WECA began as its existence as the local push and was clearly focused on stopping bad change. In that incarnation, Weka fought against the surrender of the gully to housing subdivision, and it was the voice of those who opposed the go-between bridge and thought the money would be better spent on public transport. Those were urgent issues. With time, Weka grew into a more balanced organisation that represented the community's desire to make things happen as well as make terrible things not happen. Weka became the structure through which such wonderful things as the Kurilpa Derby, the West End Film Festival and the Beggars Banquet were organised. Not to mention the campaign which finally delivered us this space by way both publicly owned and publicly accessible. I mention this because while we resist retrograde changes, while we do anything, we live in the here and now and must, in the words of the great Stephen Stills, have the courage to get out on the streets and tell the truth every day. But if we can't do it with a smile on our faces and if we can't do it with love in our hearts, then children, we ain't got no right to do it at all. We can fight against terrible changes like those proposed for the ABSO side. And we can fight for positive changes like the world-class, socially and environmentally sustainable development that should be happening there. But in the process, we can either grow closer together or we can become a community divided. In all the toing and froing and all the trash talking, the trolling and the cynical allegations, I've never been prouder of Weka's policy and track record of political non-alignment. We have a wide selection of political parties that are active locally, and it's everyone's right to join one of their choosing. But Weka is our community organisation for all of the community, and whatever your political persuasions, you should join it and have your say. And you might even think about throwing your hat in the ring for a place on the management committee. There's never a great deal of competition for those. The work is hard, but the wages are non-existent. So let's get out there on the street and tell the truth, and let's do it with love in our hearts and smiles on our faces.
Well spoken, Adrian. Thank you. So just for those who don't quite know exactly where we're up to with this side, I just want to give you a quick information dump. So the West Village site, down on the former ABSO site, it was proposing to include 7 15-storey high-rise towers and a really big supermarket. It falls short of complying with the neighbourhood plan in a lot of ways. Particularly, it didn't have the required 20% open space. The densities were far higher than the infrastructure plan for the area permitted. But most concerningly for me, there were no transitions down to street level, and there was no sense of human scale in the initial designs that we saw. So rather than having tall buildings in the middle and then gradually stepping down so the buildings on street level are a bit shorter and fit better with the rest of the street, it was just massive towers. And we said, well, we can do better than that. It's possible to design high-density development in a way that fits with the neighbourhood and that creates vibrant, usable public spaces, not private malls where only the rich can afford to hang out, but genuine public spaces where everyone is welcome to meet and congregate. And I think we can do that on this site. That's what's really important, is that frequently we're told, oh, it's too late, the plans have already been approved, you can't change anything now, the money's talking. But actually, we've already seen that that's not the case. And after sustained community pressure, we had Brisbane City Council approve the development, and then after sustained community pressure, the state government is investigating calling in the project, and that is a huge win. That basically means that the state government will set aside the decision of City Council and redecide the matter, and that's really exciting. So everyone give yourselves a round of applause for that, because that's a big step. And a few months ago, people were saying, there's no way that's going to happen. There's no way the state government's going to intervene. But it's because people like us out here on the ground showed that we care enough about this issue and showed that there's an appetite for sustainable development that fits well with the character of the area and, most importantly, is inclusive. I keep coming back to that, but it's so important that this development is not just for wealthy people. It's so important that it includes public housing and affordable community housing. And we know that the Deputy Premier has the power to do that. That's really important to understand here. A ministerial call-in of a development like this, basically allows the Minister, if they want, to send the whole thing back to the drawing board. So they have really broad discretion to decide what happens on that site. And our demand is that we, as local residents in conversation with architects and town planners, we make the decisions for the future of that site. That's the core premise here, is that we deserve a say in how our neighbourhoods evolve. And it shouldn't be tokenistic. It shouldn't be, oh, here's a survey, or here's the plan, tell us what you think about it. It should be, no, you tell us what you want the plan to be. That's how neighbourhood planning should work, and it is a disgrace in this city that it does not. People say, oh, that's just how it is, but that's not how it is in other cities. In other cities, communities actually get consulted and their input is taken on board and finds its way into the final neighbourhood plans. Whereas here, communities get consulted and then the developers get consulted and the developers' plans find their way into the final neighbourhood plans. And that is unjust, and it is not sustainable, and it's not yielding good outcomes for the community. But happily, we here have been able to articulate an alternative vision for that site. We've been able to say, no, we can envision a better way of designing that site that strikes the right balance between density and small business and open space and community services. And quite a few residents have worked for a long time to start pulling together all these disparate ideas of what could work. And I've started to have presented an alternative vision. It's just a draft. The idea is to get people talking and to recognise that we can do better. So it's not a final, this is what it's going to be. It's, what do you think? Here are some ideas. And so I'd like to invite Neil up to the microphone to talk about the alternative vision that the residents have put together. Please welcome Neil.
Hi everyone, I'm a resident of West End, and I think this was it was formed out of the larger kind of campaign, I guess, where a group of community volunteers got together and decided that they would run community consultation. We would have meetings where people could actually articulate what they wanted on the site. We would talk to local businesses, we would engage WECA, and we would distill all of that feedback and look at what was most important to the community generally. And working together with a group of talented planners in the community, town planners and architects, we came up with this. It's here, so you can take a copy with you. We encourage you to share it, email it to Jackie Trad, email it to the City Council, to communicate to them what we'd like to see here. But really, it's just an example of what you can do when you mobilise the community enough and you get enough feedback to communicate, actually, to the people that matter what we would like to see. It's easy, it's not difficult, and it can be done for any kind of issue. This is just one example of what we've done anywhere across the city. I'd encourage you to kind of get involved in that way. But, you know, it's there for you, it's meant to be pinned up, it's meant to be shared, it's on social media. Grab your copy off of the web, email it to your friends, your colleagues, like I said, to the politicians, to media, anybody really to share. But really it is encapsulating some of those ideas that we talk about over and over, that we would like to see at least 10% public housing and 10% affordable housing. We'd like to see open space. We'd like to see the night markets back on that space. We'd like to see Aboriginal culture represented on that site. Why is it not? Why can't we have something there that encourages that historic connection back to that site? We'd like to see creative arts represented there, you know, all the creative arts. We'd like to see small startups. We'd like to encourage business back into West End. Who's going to buy our coffees during the week if we're all leaving West End to go to work? So it's kind of distilling all of that feedback into one document that can be easily communicated and shared. And like Jonathan said, it's not static, it's absolutely fluid. If you've got ideas, please share them on the social media sites with Jono. This can continue to evolve, and we'll keep pushing until we can't anymore. So I encourage you all to participate. Thanks.
Cool. We'll get marching in a couple of minutes, but I just want to quickly bust a myth that's circulating around the inner city construction boom in Brisbane, which I find really frustrating, and that is the fact that we're continually told that this kind of development is good for the economy, as though that means it's good for society more generally. But I think what's really important to recognise is that right now there's an oversupply of 1 and 2 bedroom apartments in the inner city. A significant oversupply. Anyone who walks down Montague Road and counts the empty apartments can see that. And those people who are buying apartments are not doing it because they have the money saved up. They're doing it because they're taking on large amounts of debt. And they're doing that because they're worried they'll fall behind. I've felt that fear myself. With people of my generation, like 20 years ago, it was something like 51% of 25-year-olds own their own home. Can you imagine that? Half the 25-year-olds owning their own home. That's a pipe dream today. It's outrageous. And I think people of my generation are rightly pissed off that we're told we have to take on a 30-year mortgage just to buy a little dinky one-bedroom apartment without any natural light and insufficient open space. And it comes back to the fact that housing is being treated as a commodity. These apartments are being bought and sold and traded like trading cards, and it's not really about livability anymore, it's about profit. And I think that's what we all recognise here, but we need to remind the state government that what we're doing here is not economically sustainable. The workers who build these apartments can't afford to live in them. There's no demand. This dependence on overseas investors is going to dry up, and when that happens, we risk precipitating a property market collapse. And I don't want to be alarmist about that, but we need to recognise what we're dealing with, because a property collapse is not what anyone wants to see. It's not like, oh, suddenly the properties get cheaper and then we can all afford to buy them. It's like everyone loses their jobs, and we don't want that to happen. So what we want is a soft landing to the construction boom. We want a gradual decrease in the values of properties, and we want a gradual tapering down of the construction boom. But what we're seeing at the moment is rampant increase in the number of apartments with no end game, with no plan, with no transition to other industries. Queensland has built its entire economy after the mining boom. We've shifted to this construction boom, and we don't have an exit strategy. And it's really concerning. And for me, and I think people of my generation, it's particularly frustrating because we've been locked out of the housing market and we're forced to choose between being renters for life with unstable leases and exploitative landlords and moving house every year, or we're forced to take on massive mortgages and work 50, 60 hours a week just to pay the bills. And it's not fair, and it's not just, and it's not sustainable. But we have the opportunity here today to make our voices heard, to show that we care, and to show the state government that there's an appetite for something different. People want this, we want change, and we know it can be done because we've seen it done in other cities around the world and around Australia. So without ranting too much though, I just want everyone to keep that in mind and be excited about what ultimately is a positive campaign. This is not, no, we're against development. This is, we can imagine a better world and a better city, and we should be inspired by that. So I might just try out a chant on everyone. We did it at a rally a couple of months back, and it seemed to work pretty well. I'll just say each line and you guys can repeat after me. There's more to the city than concrete and steel.
There's more to the city than concrete and steel.
We didn't vote for your dirty deals.
We didn't vote for your dirty deals.
We can do better than your crowded towers.
We can do better than your crowded towers.
If you don't listen, we'll take back the power.
If you don't listen, we'll take back the power.
There's more to this city than concrete and steel.
There's more to the city than concrete and steel.
We didn't vote for your dirty deals.
We didn't vote for your dirty deals.
We can do better than your crowded towers.
We can do better than your crowded towers.
If you don't listen, we'll take back the power.
If you don't listen, we'll take
Yeah,
back
give yourselves a round of applause. That was great. Cool. All right, we'll get marching in a couple minutes. I just want to mention one quick thing, which is that this campaign is a part of a broader right to the city movement to take back control of urban planning and housing affordability in the inner city. Next Saturday, a whole bunch of local residents are organising an ideas fiesta / conference called Cracks in the Concrete. Cracks in the Concrete. It's a half-day conference happening over the Queensland College of Art, talking about property developer corruption, talking about sustainable development, talking about housing for refugees and migrants, talking about social justice in urban spaces. Cracks in the Concrete, next Saturday. Come along for a couple of hours or come along for the whole day. It will be really good to see a good turnout there, because what we need to do is start talking about where to next. How do we expand this? How do we take this momentum that's directed towards one specific site and use it to transform the city and transform urban culture more generally? So thank you again for coming out. Just for those who are wondering, we're going to be marching right to the Boundary Street intersection. At first the police said they didn't want us marching down Boundary Street, but we said we'd do it, and they were very accommodating, so thank you to the police. We'll be marching to the Vulture Street, Boundary Street intersection, straight down Boundary Street, and then we'll wait for the police to block off that intersection and then go around the corner to Mollison Street. We'll be distributing chalk. You're encouraged to write on the footpaths your alternative visions and what you'd like to see happen in West End instead. Feel free to express yourselves however you want, but please remember to be respectful of security guards, be respectful of the police. This isn't confrontational, this isn't about us versus them, this is about we as a community banding together and articulating a positive vision. So please channel that positive energy, have fun, smile, dance if you want to, Thank you again so much for coming out, and particularly to Paul and Lynn and the volunteers who helped with the breakfast. Please give them a round of applause. This whole city is dollar signs. Price tags on every square centimetre. They build them higher now, right up to the boundary. These clouds are made of concrete and steel. They never move, they never fade. Shadow streets and wind tunnels. Subdivide and conquer. Replacing lounge room windows with mirrors. The walls are getting higher. Intercom security. The walls are getting higher. We don't know our neighbours' names no more. Puppet masters dressed as real estate agents. Will my lease be renewed again? Will they jack up the rent again? And if you want your own apartment, it's a 25-year mortgage. 6 months of your life for each square metre. Even the workers who build them can't afford to buy them. So where did all that money go? Where does all that money go? The public square is now leased out for profit. Neither trees nor musicians are tolerated unless they're good for business. The posh restaurant guards its footpath dine-in territorially, even when there aren't any other customers. We've got the money for a motorway, but not for public benches. 1920s dystopian fiction prophesied that in the future, exploited workers would be paid to run on treadmills. Now the future has arrived. Our workers pay for the privilege. There are laws against sleeping in the park, laws against dancing in the street. It's easier to get permits for advertising billboards than public art projects. They'd rather leave the walls grey. You've got no right to this city. You could rent here 20 years, put down roots, forge community, but it don't mean a thing when them wrecking balls swing. It's already been approved, already been approved, it's already been approved. There's nothing you can do. See, they want us to feel powerless. These towers just keep sprouting up from the bedrock. We got jackhammers for alarm clocks, drowning in bitumen, choking on car fumes, while their starting price is $500,000 for 2 bedrooms. So who defines progress? Who really runs the system? They curse us and evict us like there's nothing we can do to stop them. Now them empty units multiplying, but they still won't drop the rent. Vacant shops and silent streets is all just profit for the 1%. They can sterilise our culture, confiscate our megaphones, call us troublemakers just because we don't want a 30-year bank loan. We paint rainbows on bitumen. They whitewash monochrome, but we're never going to stop fighting because this city is our home. This city is our home. I said this city is our home. Them bankers price us out, but we leave footprints in the stone. Let's march, everyone. Let's march. Let's do this.